Yeah, hi there. Welcome to I Should Be Writing. This is a podcast for wannabe fiction writers. It streams live on Thursdays on Twitch, twitch.tv/MightyMur, and we stream at 3 o'clock Eastern Time. Yeah, I'm a writer, have been for several years, been a podcaster for even longer. I Should Be Writing just celebrated its 20th anniversary, and I just got back from Worldcon, which is why I sound like this. I'm not sick. I'm just very hoarse from talking very loud in loud bars through masks. So, a lot of people are getting sick from Worldcon. I hope anyone listening is not one of those people, or it's an easy thing for you to handle. Anyway, because of travel, I have not been doing too much in the ways of my novel, except for a lot of back burner thinking, which is going to turn into pretty frantic writing in September, I believe. But my book came out in July, Infinite Archive. It's the third in the Midsolar Murders trilogy. For today, I'm happy to welcome Nigerian-Canadian author Chinaza Bado, author of Birth of a Dynasty.
Hi.
Hi. So glad to have you. This novel's full of political intrigue, giants, magic, and vengeance. We always like all of those things. So welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
Sure, sure. Well, tell us a little bit about Birth of a Dynasty.
Birth of a Dynasty is pretty much like an epic fantasy that is centered around three noble houses and their fight for power over the continent, which then involves politics, magic, and a lot of search for vengeance. The characters are very young when the story starts off. Our main character, Mukuru, sees his whole entire family gets pretty much annihilated. And the book follows his journey to get vengeance against the kingdom that perpetrated that violence against him.
So, your one thing I'm interested in is it's always an argument about people like what makes a book young adult. You're saying your main character starts out young when he feels his first need for vengeance, but then grows up and goes into more of a adult type focus.
So he starts the story starts off when he's about 9, 10 years old.
Mm-hmm.
He gets by the end of the book he's about 13. So each book he's like they're aging throughout they will age throughout the series, but the beginning is they're much quite young, but I wouldn't qualify it as a young adult novel, mostly because of the themes are very adult.
Mm-hmm.
It's about these young people who have to deal with the adult world that they have been thrown into via violence.
Right. So tell me about your publication story. This is not your first book, but it is your first fantasy book. What can you tell us about your past?
So this book, I didn't know this until I finished because I had been working on this book for 7 years. And so I didn't realize it was 7 years because I just kept stopping and working on other projects. And it's just the world building and so many things just was so mentally consuming that I would put it down for times and periods. But by the time I finished, that was in summer of 2023. I then sent it to my agent, who then tried shopping it around, and within 2 weeks, we got it acquired by Harper Voyager, and so it was a pretty fast turnaround, and which I'm grateful for. So
That's
the
amazing.
story, the long process in writing kind of went very fast in like the acquiring and now publication of the novel.
Great. So I'm sorry, what did you write before?
I still write, but haven't yet like gone back to it. I wrote romance novels.
So what made you go into fantasy?
I've always loved fantasy. Like I've always read fantasy. I mean, I just one was the idea, could I make that jump? Could I do it? I mean, I love romance also, but I wanted this to be very much a traditional characteristics of the fantasy genre. And for you to write it, I think there's a lot of times I have to go back and reading into the fantasy genre, making that my primary source of reading for a while. And then just the confidence of going into it is something I always wanted to do as a writer. I don't think I ever want to be pigeonholed into one genre. I like the freedom of being able to write what I want to write when I have the desire to.
So you've not established that thing we call golden handcuffs, where what you're writing is dictated by the fact that you're actually making money doing it.
Um, I think I don't know. I don't think it's ever just, I think I've always had this sense of like, I'm writing for me first and foremost. I mean, there are times where I'm guessing that you I don't think the other thing is, to be 100% honest, I don't think I've made so much money in one genre or with one series where I feel handcuffed to it. I'm like, I've done decently, and so I don't think I've ever been like, I have to be in this one lane or else I'm in trouble. So luckily, because of that, I've given myself space to explore.
That's great. I'm never sure if I want that problem or not because it certainly sounds nice to have, but that's because I'm not on that side. I can also write whatever I want, so that's fun freedom there.
Yeah.
So speaking fantasy focused, what do you think you did differently from other authors to get published?
To be honest, I don't really know what other authors are really doing to know if I'm doing anything differently.
Yeah.
I don't know if I've ever, like, the authors that I've met are always already published, and so I've never really come across people that are like, I haven't been able to publish. But that's probably because I had already been writing in one space already. So, but I think because it wasn't my very first like novel, I was already in the habit of fine tuning before I sent it out.
Yeah.
So like before I even got it to my agent, I had already gone through two or three rough drafts. Um, and so by the time it got to her desk, and then from her desk to pitching it to publishing houses, there had already been a lot of work done on it. I think sometimes the mistake a lot of people have when they write a novel is, you're finished with it, you're really proud of it, you love it, you think it's the greatest thing in the world. And then there might be times where you have doubt, but you just want to get it to somebody. And I just feel like I spend more time holding on to it and going over it and over it, almost obsessing about it before I let someone else like get their hands on it.
So when do you know it's done?
Um, it's weird to just say it's just a feeling.
No, not at all.
Yeah, there's a time when I think that I think when I get to the point where I'm like nitpicking at that point where there's
Yeah.
no real things, where I'm just like nitpicking on like commas and whether or not this character like I should use said or like some other tag. I think that's when I'm like, okay, I'm just fiddling with this at this point. I think it's okay. I think that's usually when I get the feeling like I'm not really doing anything plot wise anymore. I'm just kind of like holding myself back. That's when I know it's time to like let go.
So what about tell me about your agent. I know a lot of people worry about if they'll have problems switching genres, and a lot of agents say I do rep X but I don't rep Y. So did your agent already rep fantasy, or did she just pivot with you?
She I don't know the answer to the question, like of what she, because I've had my agent now for about 10 years. So there have been times where she's flat out told me, I don't know if I can sell this
Yeah.
or this doesn't work. So there's never been a genre where I've told her I wanted to do something. She will just tell me, send me the manuscript, I'll see. And then I sent her the manuscript and she lets me know whether or not she thinks this is something she could market. So I think because of the fact that we've just been together for so long at this point, she will try to get me into some certain spaces. Or if she couldn't do it, I think she would probably help me find someone that could. But most oftentimes, she just, if the manuscript isn't good, she'll just tell me shelf it and rework it at another time. That's most likely the what would happen if she didn't really approve of the manuscript or couldn't think of where it would land. So that would be more of it. But she doesn't just do romance novels, so it was pretty much easier. Plus I feel like she just has a good scope and view of the landscape for publishing in totality.
Yeah. I tend to think that's a good measure of whether an agent's a good fit or not. If they know you and they know the way you write, and they're not really worried about the genre, they just know that, they can trust you to do a good job doing it.
Yeah, because even within the romance genre, there are subgenres, and so She already knew that I was like basically skipping through subgenres of romance anyway, and she was happy to go about that. I think her philosophy is a good book is a good book,
Mm-hmm.
and so very much so, I always give it to her, and she lets me know very brutally, but very sincerely, whether or not she thinks this is something that we could sell.
Yeah, it really it's always good when your agent knows how much you can take and how much you can't take. So tell me about your day to day. What is your writing routine?
See, my writing routine changes depending on what the book is.
Mm-hmm.
For this fantasy, because of the fact that it took me so long, I was kind of I had to write it chapter by chapter, and when I mean chapter by chapter, I mean I would write one chapter in a separate document and then put it into the main manuscript when I was finished with it. Because I had a tendency of going back, and that's what I'm saying. Like when I said I spend a lot of time like revising stuff. Usually for writing, when I first think of a book, I start off with what I want the ending to be.
Oh,
Then I decide who my villains are, and then from my villains, I then create my heroes. I never really start from the heroes and then work towards the villain.
where does the plot and the conflict come in?
The plot comes in from the ending. So, like, when I get to the ending, I'm wondering what is going to stop me from getting to this last place that I want to be. What would be all the obstacles to get to this ending? So I would like have a like let's say in the end let's say this person ends up ruler of this country.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, how would be the question, and then when I get to the how, I would then decide like all of the things that made it possible for me to get to that ending. So I kind of work backwards, if that makes sense.
Oh no, it does make sense. It's fascinating. So this is a trilogy, right?
Yes.
So do you know the end of the whole arc?
I know the whole entire ending. The thing is, so I know the ending of the series,
Mm-hmm.
which is actually kind of what made it hard to figure out where to end book one,
Mm.
because I knew exactly how, and I was just like, I don't want each book to be like 600 pages long, but like I knew where I wanted the story to end as the whole series. So figuring out where to stop for the first book was kind of like, even as I'm working on the second book, it's still the same issues. Just like there's so much I want to say because
Mm-hmm.
I know what the ending is already. So when I know where it is, I can kind of gauge where I am in the whole, if it's a timeline, a whole scale of the story, and kind of like chop it.
Okay. So would you call yourself an outliner or not?
Um,
Even if you do outline a different way than anybody else.
I don't think like I sometimes I do need to outline a chapter. But most of the time I'm just working towards a goal.
Mm-hmm.
It's not more so of an outline. I'm working towards that end. So which sometimes takes me on crazy paths that I wasn't expecting because it'll be coming to me as I'm writing it.
Yeah.
But like I tried to be an outliner. I think outliners are so cool. It's just like I see them with their whiteboards and like all their notes and their
Spreadsheets.
tabs, and I'm like, this seems like such a very streamlined and non-chaotic way to approach this. Whereas in my mind, scenes are just flashing and I'm trying to grab onto them.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I've tried the outlining thing. It just doesn't work for me, and I don't know why.
Wow. I'm sorry. Just the way you said that was just awesome. Because yeah, the spreadsheets and the whiteboards and the beats, they got the list of the beats and yeah.
It's I have another author friend, and they had like chapter highlight notes. Like they would highlight, they would write it almost looked like those kids that were really good in school with their notebooks.
Mm-hmm.
And I just like, I've always wanted to be the person with the color, like the color coded notebook, and I can't, because like I just will come up with things on the random.
Yeah.
Like other things will inspire me, I just will decide it's not working midway, change it. It's just my writing approach is just so much more chaotic than that, but I'm so jealous of the outliners. That
Yeah.
just seems like it makes things go so much faster.
Yeah. Yeah. But then again, I wonder how fun it is to write from an outline. Because one of the things I love most about not being an outliner is when I don't know what's going to happen next and I figure it out while I'm writing. That is just,
Exactly.
that's fun.
It's fun. It's also like you also go on an emotional roller coaster
Mm-hmm.
yourself. Sometimes you're like, I've had times where I'm gasping and like, I didn't realize this is where the plot was gonna go,
Yeah.
but I'm so excited to delve into it. But from what I've heard from the plotliners, they don't understand us. They think we're crazy. They think we are insane. They it is like they're like, your brain must be a madhouse. And I was just like, that's
Yeah.
fair.
Yeah.
That's fair. Yeah, I just have characters talking in
Mm-hmm.
the back of my mind sometimes, and I just have to figure out when I'm going to put it down on paper.
Yeah. Yeah. It's chaos, but it's still kind of fun chaos. This is heavily based on mythology. Tell me how mythology inspires you with your writing and where you get your inspirations.
So for a very long time, I was a humanities major. So I was reading a lot of Greek Roman classics.
Mm-hmm.
And then obviously when that hits, you end up reading classical Greek mythology, which is where a lot of like fantasies kind of stem from. And it's kind of like the very first time I got a sense of like world building inside this type of fantasy outline. From there, I kind of spread out. And then at some point, I was just like, I am of African descent, and yet I have not really explored much of African fantasy and mythology. And so I spent a good many years reading up on mythology and also listening to some of the stories my father would tell me that he learned when he was a child.
Mm-hmm.
And sorry, my child has just decided to wake up from her nap. She's in the background. She's with my aunt and my husband. But anyway, so yes, I spent a lot of time reading and following the mythology of different African nations and areas. And the thing is, a lot of the mythology that I was reading, some of it was the same because a lot of the countries that now exist in Africa didn't exist. They were kingdoms. And so like the lines of where countries were have been changed. And so I found myself like just getting into it, especially some of the most interesting um mythologies that I learned that were all over the continent, even though people were so far away from each other, especially with giants and mermaids and things that I hadn't learned before. And so I drew from through all throughout the African continent to make this world.
Wow, that's interesting. I hadn't thought. I always thought that I should have taken history instead of English because learning how storytelling evolves and how it shapes cultures is is really interesting. I only discovered that
Yeah.
after I left college. But the fact that you had a large part of land with people greatly separated from each other, that is a really interesting thing. How did the myths evolve from group to group?
Um, a lot of it was in just description of what the myths look like. Especially like a lot of people, one thing that I would learn, even though it's not in my book, mostly because I felt like we've had a lot of dragons already.
Never too many
I
dragons.
there's a lot of, I love a good dragon, but in African mythology, I was when I was reading through it, I was learning about how a lot of the dragons in African mythology are kind of like snake-like dragons. They don't have
Right.
legs. and how different cultures, some of them perceive it as good omens and some perceive it as bad, some perceive it as health. And then I was also thinking of like when I learned that, I was just remembering thinking about like, if you guys know the healthcare symbol in the United States, or in that's like kind of like serpents with the wings.
Right, right.
So I was just thinking of like how many things like interlap in those senses. So I just found it very cool about how each culture and group had a description, and how some of it was similar and some of it was just so vastly in the same realm, but a creature that was good in one culture was bad in another.
That is really interesting. We have a question from the chat. Do you find that being a pantser, a non-outliner,
Oh yeah.
does it complicate the whole revision process?
No, because by that time the book is written. So like once I've got into like the story's there. If I'm revising midway through the story, yes, it becomes a problem. Or when I'm in the next book, it does create consistency issues because you were writing through your feelings and then you forgot something that you put in
Yes.
book one. And it's it's a valid criticism because the readers would say, well, wasn't this a rule in book one? And you're like, oh right, I forgot about that because I didn't outline it. It came to me in the moment. So it does require me going back constantly to see what I wrote. What I do now, especially with this book, is I ended up writing key notes of stuff into another document. So it's kind of like not an outline, but an info sheet that I created based on the book as I was writing. So I would
Right.
like say who the characters were and side characters. I would make that into an info sheet. So I would always remember who I put with what and what descriptor. Like if I said somebody had a scar on their left eye and then I changed it to the right eye, it's just consistency, stuff like that.
Yeah. Consistency is a big problem of mine, too. So, how much of the rest of the trilogy had you written?
So I have book one finished, obviously. Book two is finished, but it has to go through editing.
Yeah.
And so the only book left is the third book. I have not started that one yet.
Do you tend to write clean first drafts?
Not really.
Yeah.
I feel like all of those are very glamorous when you think about it. But then when I get to the practical act of writing, it's just so much more messier for me.
Yeah.
Then I feel like other people, like I hear other people and I'm like, wow, that sounds nice. That's absolutely not how I write though.
Yeah, me too. I was hoping you'd have a tip for me.
It seems like we kind of have the same writing process.
Yeah, yeah. It does sound like that. Except I don't work from the end, but sometimes I'll bop around the book because I'll know like where someone's personal arc will take them. And I'll know this scene has to happen. So I'll put it in there and just hope I find a place for it at the end.
That sounds a lot more stressful even to me because I feel like you're just hanging.
Yeah, I guess it can feel like that, but for me, it's like if I don't know what comes next linearly in the book, but I
Yeah.
know other stuff that's going to happen, it at least lets me get, word count done for the day and move the book a little bit forward, even though there's a big hole.
I could I know I just said that I worked from there. I know the end, but I'm always working linearly to the end. So like I know where I'm ending up, but I can never like write another chapter. Like I couldn't be on chapter 3 or chapter 4 and then go and write chapter 14 because I don't that sounds scary. That sounds I would probably get stressed out and like shelf the novel for another time. I don't know how that would be just harsh
It
on
it
my brain.
it does stress me out a bit. But I like to. Part of me is thinking this isn't going to make it to the final because you don't know what comes before this. But part of me is
That's
just
exactly
like
what I was going to ask.
I made if I feel sure about the scene and I can feel good about getting my word count done, then I'll do it. Yeah.
So, can I ask you a question? Do you have folders, like whether in your computer or actually physically, like Do you have folders of chapters that didn't make it into your book?
Yes, but by saying folders, you imply I have some sort of filing system. And I
Ah,
don't. I try to save different versions of my book. And I
ah,
was talking at Worldcon about, there's a book, there's a chapter in my latest book that was cut because it was a little too sexually explicit, and I haven't put any sex in any of the books, so we had to walk back from that. But I still think it's a very funny scene, and anybody who chooses to read it should be able to. And so I've been thinking, I gotta go find that scene, and I'm kind of afraid to look. But technically, yes, I have them. How to look
oh,
through them or file them, I don't know.
oh, wow.
It was a internet Rule 34 joke that got moved from a chapter to about 2 or 3 paragraphs. So
Mm.
we are going to take a break shortly, and then we'll continue with the interview. If you're hanging out, great. Keep hanging out with us. If you are listening to this later and you want to hear the other part of the interview, you can check us out at Patreon, patreon.com/MightyMur, or mers-hot-mic at ghost.io. It's a really clumsy URL. And then you can get the whole episode with no ads even. So consider that, and we'll see you in a couple of minutes.
I want to see my name up on that shelf, on the spine of a paperback.
Is there anything else you would like to talk about that we have not touched on?
No, I think that's it. I'm really grateful for the questions.
Of course, of
And
course.
I just, oh, one thing. I always get this question, especially is like, any tips for writing? I would definitely always say just write, even if you think it's bad. Even if you think it's bad, because here's the thing, even writing badly will get you to writing well
Yeah.
eventually. So that would be my biggest tip, is to write even if you think, oh, this is messed up. If you write it, close it, come back a week later and read it, your mind will start to fine tune what your skills are. So I would definitely say just keep writing.
Excellent. Well, the book is Birth of a Dynasty, and it's available now. Where can we find you online?
You can find me on TikTok. You can find me on Threads. You can find me mostly. I'm very active on Instagram now. So yeah, wherever you can think of, I am most likely there.
All right. Well, and we'll put those links in the show notes. Thank you so much for chatting with us, Chinaza.
Thank you so much for having me. I truly appreciate it.
Awesome. And you can find me at murverse.com or email me questions at mightymur@gmail.com. And you can subscribe to the podcast most places. You can subscribe to the exclusive podcast over at Patreon or Ghost. And if you look online, you'll find Infinite Archive and all my other stuff. I'm very Googleable, and I just hit my head again. So I think we're done with this. Thanks for hanging out, guys.
Thank you for listening
and
to
you
I Should Be Writing, the longest running writing podcast in existence. This episode was made possible by the Fabulous, who support the podcast via Patreon or Substack. Join the Fabulous at patreon.com/mightymur or mightymur.substack.com. Theme music provided by John Anealio, art provided by Numbers Ninja, and podcast hosting provided by Libsyn. This episode is released under Creative Commons Attribution Non-Commercial No Derivatives 4.0 license. You can find all of my books and podcasts at murverse.com.
I should be writing. I should be submitting my next draft, but I'm sitting home watching the doctor. Yeah, I'm sitting home watching the doctor.